of my WordPress friends. I've been watching from remotely and seeing like, oh my gosh, I saw Ian Stewart. Let's see here. How do I log in again? Okay. All right. So I am so honored to be back in this world. It's one of my favorite parts of my life. I didn't know about the WordPress community, but I was one of the first users of WordPress at a place called the MIT Media Lab. And I remembered people being surprised that I had a blog, and it's because I had WordPress. I was able to do one important thing, which was I was interviewed in Wired magazine at the time, and then Wired said that I said something that I didn't say. I'm not sure if you've ever gotten that situation, but you know, John said this, and I didn't say that. That sounds pretty bad. So I set off to create my own blog to say what I actually said the way I say it. And I felt the power of the platform in that moment. And years later, when I had the opportunity to work with Matt and understand this entire community of people who are trying to figure out tech, but from not a corporate perspective, from a community perspective, it really deeply inspired me. I remember in my, I think it was my first 2 months, I was at a WordPress meetup in Miami, and I think Matt, you know how like Matt is like this mysterious character that appears in the lore of WordPress world, and like, oh, there's Matt, you know? And you know, Matt's like not like this gigantic Hulk-like creature. He's like a unassuming guy with like a mustache. He kind of walks around, you know? I remember after he gave his talk, I was sitting in the front row of seats like this, and there was a woman got up, and she said, I just want to thank you, Matt, because I'm 56, and I was out of a job, and my husband also lost his job, and then we figured out how to use WordPress to monetize some of the stuff that we were doing, and now I'm happy to report that we're on our feet and we're going. And it was just one of these wonderful stories, I think, that are kind of missed in the sort of startup, sort of like, you know, hoodie wearing whatever world. And it really stuck with me. So I think the WordPress community has something that others might be lucky to get to know if they stopped and looked at it more carefully. I love telling people that I learned in the WordPress world that PHP can stand for people helping people. And I thought that's a powerful thing. I have been living in different worlds since my WordPress world. And I thought maybe a way to help you understand it is what I've been looking at. Since 2013, I used to work in venture capital. It's a Silicon Valley firm called Kleiner Perkins. And when I was there, I was really interested in how the nature of machine learning seemed to be changing. And most people aren't aware of this, but the big year is 2012. 2012 is when, do you all remember when you would buy PCs and you would buy a graphics card, sort of you had to? Yeah, you had to. And then it was like a Matrox whatever, or it is a Pentium whatever. And then you're waiting for the Pentium to get better, but it costs more to change your Pentium, but it's easier to pay for your Matrox upgrade or whatever. And so you end up with this like pile of plastic cards in your closet, you know, kind of annoying, like, you know, and I think of it like, I guess in the 1800s, there were these things called lobsters in New England that people said, nobody wants to eat those, and these like really hard, clickety-clackety things are all drawing up. And I think that's the way GPU cards were for us. They were like lobsters. sort of dying there, us not knowing that someday the juice of the GPU could do a lot. And it was 2012 when a certain team of researchers, I forget where, they realized that the way they were doing sound processing and machine learning combined, it was just very inefficient using an average. Well, that's my blink thing to remind myself to blink. 1 second. I'm not sure if you have. Actually, it might not be bad to keep it on, so if you don't mind, I'll keep it on because we'll blink. Do you have that problem too? It's not good for your eyes, and I'm older, and I've learned you got to blink, okay? But in 2012, what happened was they used these lobsters that were sort of dying there out on the sandy beach and said, hey, I wonder if I can eat this lobster. Maybe I can use it for processing machine learning tests. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so that's when speech recognition went from failing at least 1 out of 4 times. You may remember you're talking to it, and you're talking to it, and it's like, it's like, forget it. It jumped from failing 25% of the time to failing 8% of the time, just with that flex to GPUs. And so that's when the whole thing started. But you can really hear it in the sound synthesis world. This is iOS 9 in 2015.
1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces.
And then this is in 2016.
1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces.
Doesn't sound that much different, right? And then in 1 year, it became this.
1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces.
And then I'm sure you heard OpenAI's Alloy.
1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces.
And then this came out like at the end of last year.
1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces.
And then this one came out.
1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces.
Can you say it in a way that would surprise someone that it's coming from an AI?
You won't believe this, but 1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces. Mind blown.
Can you say it again?
Okay, brace yourself. 1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces. I can say it again and again if you'd like. It's kind of hypnotic, don't you think?
Yeah, so that's like 10 years, and it just suddenly, do you see that? That's an exponential curve thing. And by the way, I modified Obsidian with my own plugin. I really like outsourcing my saying of anything. So I can do that too. I don't have to be here. So anyways, it's weird. Okay, and I think what's important to know for all of those people dabbling or entering AI, the idea of using chat for an interface is not a new idea. There's this book in 2018 from Erica Hall, who I know was a speaker at a past WordCamp. I remember Matt inviting Erica that year. And Erica wrote a book on conversational design, which I wrote the foreword to. And at the time, these books were all failures in the market because no one thought it would ever happen. Just mind you, but there's a lot of good stuff in Erica's book that still, it's like, actually coffee goes bad, but you know what I mean. It's like an old wine bottle that is like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. There's a lot of stuff pre-GPT in there that people don't see as well, and it's very humanistic because it's Erica. And I had the opportunity to be in class. My first class in AI at MIT was in 1985, and it was taught by a person named Patrick Henry Winston, who was a co-founder of the Lisp movement. If you remember Lisp, any Lisp people? Any people? Yeah, thank you, Lisp people. Yeah, Lisp people. People don't brag about Python, but a lot of these languages have their genes in languages like Lisp. But anyways, it was 1985, and the main professor was Patrick Henry Winston, who had the cool name. And then, sometimes you have like what's called a recitation instructor, the kind of like not less important instructor. And one of them was this person named Joseph Weizenbaum. And I always skipped his class because I thought, nah, it's not so interesting. But then years later, I realized that he's the person who created the first chatbot. The story goes that in 1966, pardon me? I can't hear you. This was built in 1966, actually 67, actually. Pardon me? Oh, we can debate the year, but I'll just say sometime long time ago. How about that? But Eliza is a program that he wrote, and the story goes that he had finished it, and then he left for the evening, and one of his grad students came in and thought he was on the other end of the terminal and started talking to it. Such that the next day, when Dr. Weizenbaum came in, the grad student said, "Oh my gosh, that was an amazing conversation we had." And he was a different kind of computer scientist in that he questioned technology and the implications of it. So most people from that generation unfortunately experienced war firsthand. Dr. Weizenbaum escaped Nazi Germany as a youth, and of that generation, they all question it because of the implications of technology. Like the Manhattan Project was an incredible research initiative that resulted in many deaths. And so scientists of that era had this conscience question in a way that's different than today. And so Weizenbaum didn't go off and make a startup. He went on to question what happens when these kinds of chatbots get used by the wrong people. And you can think of chatbots as a surrogate for social media, which is a kind of a constant communication loop. And so that's why I think what's more important today is to remember that it is just a technology, and technologists who understand it can do good things with it, or they can do more harm with it. And I saw this picture that I recreated in one of these AI generation things, but it's like adding AI to the stack, legacy software. So, it's like one of these pump soaps, whatever. I think it's the best illustration of what was happening in the early years. And so what I did recently, I was in Brazil and I made this series of demos. And so maybe, if you don't mind, I know some of you are AI experts, so this is not for you. This is something that I have been trying to understand and made a few recipes around it. And for recipes, I have a show called Mr. Maeda's Cozy AI Kitchen. So semantic code's important, but embeddings are even more important. Delicious. Let's cook with them in the next episode of the Cozy AI Kitchen. So we know about regular computer code, we love it, and when the Cozy AI Kitchen was born, semantic code came into the foreground. Pretty exciting, right? But those of you who have been watching our various props may have noticed the most important canister. It reads long grade embeddings, vectors just like your grandma used to make. And I made some new recipes. Let's go into my new recipes. So I have recipes, like code recipes, and I know in the WordPress community, code is poetry, so I guess it's like code is cooking poetry, I guess. But I've been making different recipes that anyone can run and use, and so this is a new series of recipes. So, oh my God, what's it going to be? 4. Okay, so who wants to bet the next number? Maybe think in your mind what it's going to be. Okay, ready? Here we go. Ooh, did anyone guess 3? 3? Oh, you're good. Okay. Did anyone guess 7 or 9? Oh, good. Well, you're hallucinating because the metaphor is dice. So you'd think 1 to 6, but some of you, why not? It's we're in Portland. So, right, let's hallucinate a little bit, right? Okay, but the thing to note is that we are good at predicting things. We're pretty good at predicting what a dice is 1 out of 6 times. And you can predict that someone is unlikely to say 7 or 9, but they could, Okay, so another example, and the value of getting older is that you get wiser, they say, but you don't necessarily get wiser, you just know more patterns. And those patterns can either be beneficial to you or detrimental to you, because you're like, oh my gosh, it always happens this way, but look out, because it just changed, kind of thing. And I was looking at the names of boys in the 70s. Top name was Michael. Do we have any Michaels in here? Any Michaels? Michaels, yeah, Michael. And then girl names was Jennifer, number 1. And then I did this in Brazil because I wanted to see what the distribution was. It was actually not Brazil. This is the United States. This is, excuse me, brain freeze. This is in 2000, what your names are more like. They see how these sound more trendy? Jacob, Tyler, And then my name, John, has really gone down the charts. My mom named me after John F. Kennedy because she thought he was handsome. But it was interesting in Brazil, because I didn't know the difference that Jose was very popular, but Joao became more. So it's like these names changed. But my point is that if you meet someone older, you're going to bet they're Jose, or if they're younger, you're going to bet this way. And how do you do that? It's because you have a large language model built inside you that's always betting, that's always guessing. So for instance, we're really good at this. So for instance, this is a proverb. So I'm going to reveal it like Vanna White. Always put your... someone's winning. Someone's GPT-5. See that? Oh, look at that. Everyone's going for aha, right? How did you do that? How did you guess, right? It's because you're able to predict the next token because you learned it. You were trained. Okay. And so this is a simple example of I'm asking it to finish this phrase as a short rhyme, roses are red. And this is a representation that most people aren't aware of. It's called logits or log probs. And so here you see I have finished this phrase as a short rhyme, roses are red. And when you give it to a large language model, it'll finish the sentence. But you can also visualize the probability. So you can see that it was like, I think I'm going to throw a V out there. I'm going to throw an IO out there. Remember that large language models don't think in words, they think in tokens, meaning subcomponents of words. V, I'm going to throw out an IO. I'm going to throw out an LETS, and I'm going to throw out an ARE. And so you can see how there's indecision in there where it could have been something else. And that's this temperature knob you'll see in large language models. You're sort of rolling the dice more each time. There's a more correct arc through. It's like do you know Avengers, Doctor Strange, where he says that thing with there's infinite possibilities of paths, whatever. That's what's going on. And you either turn up the randomness, of course the dice will roll at 9, or you dial it down. Oh, it's probably 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 6. And I'm not sure if you've ever seen this representation before. When I saw it like a couple weeks ago like this, I was like, oh, I get it, because you have to note that everyone who's deep in this doesn't quite get it themselves, at least me. So I'm like, okay. So everyone following along? Is this useful so far? Okay, let's keep going. Okay, if this gets boring, we'll switch to the more kind of sous vide cooking. But I wanted to get some fundamentals down. Okay, so the other thing that I think is valuable is this metaphor created by Herbert Simon. He is a late Carnegie Mellon professor. But he reasoned that the human rational behavior is shaped by a pair of scissors, whose 2 blades are the structure of task environments, context, and the computational capability of the actor, cognition. And so context means basically your memory, whereas cognition means how you use that memory. You know, if you are 3 years old, you don't use that memory very well. But if you, say, went to high school by then, you can use your memory in clever ways. That's the cognition part. And an example, again, going back to completion, the most challenging aspect of our medical AI, blink everyone, medical AI project was what's it going to say? I mean, I'm putting myself out there. The most challenging aspect of our medical AI project was, and it's like ensuring the accuracy and reliability of the algorithms in real world. And so it's going on, it's making stuff up. Because I don't know what medical AI project I was working on, but it was like, you know, it dropped it and said like, this is definitely this. Now, why is it doing that? It's just completing the sentence, okay? It's doing that probability of token computation is saying, since this was said, this is likely what I'll spew out for however long you want me to talk, okay? And so when we say it's hallucination, it's not a correct phrasing. It's just missing context. It's more like you say like the word non sequitur. You know, like, oh my gosh, where'd that come from, right? People do that because maybe they're missing the context, or maybe they're feeling Portland, whatever they're feeling, artisanal, whatever. It's okay. It's okay to be human, right? So, but now let's add context. So the cognition part, the model will just make stuff up. But when you give it context, like if I gave all this information, like I've been working on a machine learning project with image recognition, the data set includes X-ray images, we're using convolutional neural networks. So like I'm gonna give all this stuff to the model to complete this sentence here, the most challenging aspect. And not surprisingly, it's not going to make things up because, you know, there's a long preamble to what I'm saying, and therefore, I know how to finish the sentence. Anyone who had an astounding moment talking to ChatGPT in late 2022, it's just a magic trick where it knows nothing about you. But once you start talking to it like a new potential friend, they're like, oh my gosh, you like eggs too? Holy cow, you know? How do they know that? It'd be creepy if they knew that. It's because you said you had eggs for the morning. And mind you, the ELIZA only had, actually, ELIZA was the first computer program you would be taught to create in the computer science class at MIT. And it has 3 rules, ELIZA. It's a very primitive program. The first thing it does is it repeats back to you what you said. It just changes the wording, like, oh, I had a bad day. Oh, you had a bad day. And you're like, you get me, you know? Just that, right? It's called reflective listening, right? The other one is they would look for keywords, like mother, father, son. Like, oh, blah, 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 my mother. Oh, and they would just say, tell me about your mother. And you can't help but talking about that sometimes. And lastly, it would just interject random phrases, like, tell me more. And so just those 3 things in a computer program created the facade of communication. But it failed because it didn't have context. Because today we can work with context as a raw material, that's what's making things different. And the thing to note is that at the end of 2022, the most miraculous thing wasn't GPT-4 or GPT 3.5. It was a combination of those completion models and so-called embeddings models. I mentioned in the video, vectors just like your grandma used to make them. The embeddings are so key. Let's talk about embeddings now. There's 2 kind of models. Okay, so let's say you have 4 words, Ireland, Irish, O'Connor, and Dublin. And what I can do is I can give them to an embeddings models. I can use text embedding Maeda 002, which was the first popular model. And I'm also going to give it to text embedding 3 small. It's a newer model. And most people are still using Maeda 002, but if you use embedding 3 small, the results are much better is what I was told, but I wanted to take it to the test kitchen myself. Oh my gosh, I love watching those episodes where they're testing out the frying pan. So maybe this is like that. Okay, so I took Ireland, Irish, O'Connor, Dublin, and what I've done is I used text embedding 8002 to make what is a 1500 long numerical vector. See that? And I gave it the text embedding 3 small, and it made that vector, if you see that. So Ireland, the word, was converted to, blink, a number. Okay, Irish. So you're like, okay, this is really boring, John. I see these long numbers, so what, right? So, but each of them are converted to vectors, 2 vectors. I use pasta as a kind of like surrogate for a vector. So think like 2, it's like these numbers written on a long string of pasta. And then I can visualize these long vectors in what's called PCA, which you will argue is inaccurate for so many reasons, et cetera, reducing it to lower dimensions. Agreed. But it's a lovely way to say the following, that text embedding 8002 thinks that these 4 words are proximate, whereas text embedding 3 small thinks that Dublin and Ireland are proximate, but Irish and O'Connor are less proximate, which is a fairly good thing to do because when you look at, if you look at like Ireland versus Irish, and how does this number get calculated? So this is comparing Ireland to Irish, and that's the number you can compute. The way you compute this number is super cool. Because if you ever talk to AI people, they'll do this thing with their hands, like a dance move. And like, what is that move? They say, blah, 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 cosine similarity, blah, blah, blah. Like, what happened just now? They'll all do this, you know? It's like, why are you doing that, you know? It's because it's a way to describe the dot product of 2 vectors for the math people here, but they love doing this, and you're like, I don't know what that means. But it's just like 2 vectors like this, you know? And then all you do is like a zipper. You just take this long number, you see these 2 long vectors, then you multiply each of them, bum, 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 and then you add them up together and you normalize them, and you get this little beautiful single number. So it can compare 2 vectors very quickly on a GPU, because GPUs are very good at these long vector matrix style calculations. Okay, and because of that, you can do something even more powerful. If you notice, I had Ireland, Irish, O'Connor. I can say the sandwich I ate this morning, eggs Benedict, cows can fly, whatever. So, or Prince. Okay. So, so you can take any text of any length, roughly, and you can convert it to a long vector. So what's weird about that is you can compare like a word to a word to a sentence, a word to a paragraph, a book to a word, by just using this math. And of course, the math is not perfect. It's very important to note that all of this stuff is not perfect, but it's better than nothing. It's a true something. Okay, so, and to cap this off, embeddings and search are very similar. So if you've noticed when you search for something on the internet, it appears. It's used a variant of this technology. And let's say I'm looking for information, anxiety, and pressure. And I have these 6 documents with this text in here. And I want to figure out which one is the closest to inflation, anxiety, and pressure. And I want to note that if you use embedding 8002 versus embedding 3 small, the results come back different. It's because text embedding 8002 works in a very compressed space. So when certain words are similar, then it's like 0.91, 0.92. They're all very similar and close. But embedding 3 small is able to cover more distance. So you tend to get much better results. So if you've built a chatbot using embedding 3 small, embedding 8002, you'll find significant speed and also quality improvements with that just by searching for things. How are we doing so far? We're doing so okay? Good? Good so far? Okay. We can either go deeper or we can go into trendy stuff. Which way? We can go Ariana Grande or classical. Where do we go? Ariana? Ariana, let's go Ariana. Ariana, here we go. Okay, here we go, 1 second. Let's go back. Okay, so what's the future of user experience? I think it's clear that it's something called agentic experience, meaning that instead of building things for humans, we have to build things for so-called agents, which is essentially just computation. Blank. APIs, if you make APIs, you're already doing agentic experience. So who works on the API side of WordPress world? So, here you go, agentic experience. So you're already doing that. And just people are sort of waking up and smelling the coffee. I was backstage in San Francisco at this thing. You know how all these monitors are sort of in the back there? By the way, AB crew back there is like amazing. So I noticed there was this box that says MCP. You know what that means? So MCP is the acronym that everyone cannot stop talking about that describes this opening door to agentic experience. And I thought it was funny how it's in the backstage here. And I've been tracking different memes. Will there be no GitHub Copilot Tuesdays? So as we know, with these large language models, they're so good at completing the sentence, sort of, but completing the code base, they're extremely good at, right? And so the question is, do we have to have no AI coding Tuesday so we humans still kind of keep it up? That's interesting. And you may have heard every variant of a phrase with the word agentic in it. This is by the Z people earlier this year. But the thing to note is that, and actually Emma, the kind person that introduced me, is already doing agentic engineering. She's using N8N to automate her marketing workflows. And so all of this stuff is a long way of saying programming, which you already know. And it's just programming with this semantic flavor, basically. And anyone who starts entering this has to discover this word evals. Who knows what evals are? Evals are. Okay, if you don't know what evals are, don't worry. Just say testing. When someone says evals, say, do you mean testing? When they say evals, say, do you mean quality assurance? But they're going to keep saying evals to you, and don't get confused. Evals are important because these systems don't produce 0 or 1. They produce a gradient of possibilities, like the Doctor Strange thing. Think about that. There was only one way for Iron Man to save the world, right? Okay? Think of all the other variations. We live in the other variations. Iron Man won't save the world. We have to figure out which multiverse we have to enter. To do that by hand is too strenuous. So you want to automate how to govern, is this good or is this bad? You know? Like, how many of you have ever worked with a junior person before? Yeah? Okay, yeah, junior person. Junior person's awesome. You know, they can do anything, but sometimes they do it wrong. And then when they do it wrong, what do? You say, hold it. You don't do it this way. Do it this way instead. Or, did you read the manual? Right? Which said, don't do this, right? So those are evals. And providing those evals in this new AI world doesn't come naturally because we're so excited at what comes out of it that we don't quickly realize. Then you have to kind of send it through like a TSA sort of line, you know? You gotta like sort of secure it kind of thing. No water bottles, you know, like that, okay? And that's evals. And so evals are really important. So if you're spending time in AI, spend a lot of time on evals and just keep saying to yourself, testing, QA, intern, sort of like, you know, manual kind of thing. And it gets easier. And you should be very excited, as I am, that who loves using spreadsheets? Anyone spreadsheet lovers? Yes. We're seeing more interfaces using spreadsheets because spreadsheets are basically the IDE for everyone. It's basically a spreadsheet. And when you make a spreadsheet, you're building an automation. And actually, you're building agents. And I'll show you how that works. And have you noticed that the CLI is trending? CLI people who love CLI, command line interpreter, see that? CLI is getting so cool right now. It's a bit odd. And so there's all kind of cool stuff like this.
Drums.
It's like music, CLI, terminal style generation.
All of my code files are structured pretty
Oh
similar.
my gosh, that's so cool. And there's also, this is something I loved seeing, this guy. And I mean, the weird thing is like, we can all do this, you know? It's like not hidden or like unusable. Like this is like, ooh. Yeah, so I'm just saying this is like a weird world where you can like, it's like, what's behind this door? And like, holy cow, okay? Now, in terms of what keeps me up at night, I'm interested in technology, but like you all, I'm interested in community and the world. And I was lucky in the early 2000s to look at work from the Pew Research Trust and how the world was changing. The demographics of the world were changing. This is a graph that many who have heard or felt, but this trend was occurring and this trend was occurring, and so a dynamic was set to happen someday. Or even this one for age. It used to be that there was something called a population pyramid, where post-World War II there were a lot of babies and there were very few older people. So it was like very few older people, lots of younger people. But they predicted that there would just be many more older people because medical science keeps us alive longer. And also there are fewer babies being born as well. So it would move from a population pyramid to a population rectangle. And that means the balance of power has changed. Whereas the young could rise easily, now the young are held back by the fact that the older people are hanging around. And that was predicted. And so those two trends have stayed with me at a macroscopic level. So this is the, every year in March I give a report. So I have a long blah, blah, blah you can watch online. So I'll give you the short version of blah, 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 Ariana style in 10 minutes and 29 seconds. But this is the picture I drew of our world. This is the business world. This is the tech world. This is design world. There's greenfield stuff happening, and there's startups I know in this audience. And there's the dark AI lagoon over here, you know, like what's in there. Again, to sort of reiterate, everything that we think this model does, it does it one way. And I was in Austin at the time, and I was looking out the window of the restaurant, and it had this sign here. And I was like, what does that mean, you know? And so I asked GPT-4o at the time, what is that? And it said, I'll speed it up, it appears to be for Courtyard by Marriott. So I think it's Courtyard Marriott. But see that word likely? It's very important to remember the word likely. It is likely. You can imagine that maybe Courtyard Marriott like invested in like Gen Alpha marketing. And it's cooler to do it this way. If anyone with like younger people in their family, do you know that new trend where you're not supposed to use your smartphone to take a picture? Yeah, you know that. It's weird. You buy a crappy digital camera on eBay for hundreds of dollars, and you take really bad pictures with a very bad battery situation. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Thank you. If you don't know this, you've got to check it out. Because you're like, what? It's a really bad picture. No, this looks good. So I'll just say that it's likely that this Courtyard Marriott, but I'm not sure anymore. And again, three kinds of models. We talked about completion models and embeddings models. But there's also diffusion models, and let me show you, and I have a bunch of demos I wrote in processing, wrote a great open source project, where I have little demos like this where I'm showing how these image generation models. Think of it as unsquinting. It's like you're looking at something really easily, you can't see it, and it's like really fuzzy, and then you open your eyes slowly, and the image appears. That's what diffusion models are doing. They're basically reverse engineering what you can see from nothing into something. And the best example of how weird and wonderful this era is again, this is early this year, so it's come a long way. It's called a diffusion large language model. So instead of completing the sentence, it fuzzily unfuzzes the sentence. Did you see that? It's just a new technology. It's considered to be faster at generating text. So we're going to see these hybrids. And also, one thing that I learned that I didn't know that really blew me away is, these so-called multimodal models. Or just right now, I took a picture of the Marriott sign. Somehow it knew it was in there. If you used to work in image recognition, you know that it's a really hard game to play. You're like, what's in this image? I don't know. But we got really good at finding faces and license plates so they can charge us. Like really good at that. But other than that, it was pretty hard to figure out what's in this picture. But because of large language models, it became possible to cooperatively work with an image and a language model. Kind of like playing Go Fish. It's like, I see a person. Oh, you see a person. So maybe that person isn't alone. I found another person. Okay, and I found a table. And it's like, oh my gosh, maybe they're sitting at the table together. And I found a glass of water. Oh, wait, maybe the other one has a glass of water or a Coke or whatever. You see, we start playing this game where the narrative can sort of cooperate to help you go fish and make a fairly accurate description of the image. Okay. Now, I know many of us are afraid of what happens when there are all these deep fakes everywhere. And I had the fortune of a mentor named William J. Mitchell. By the way, I just like to say, when you die, your SEO goes to shit. But he died, and no one knows him anymore. At the time, my gosh, the guy was amazing. He wrote a book every year. And he wrote a book in 1997 called The Reconfigured Eye. And I urge anyone in images to find it on eBay. It's out of print, but it's a really interesting book. And Bill Mitchell goes through the history of images many centuries back to show that every image has always been some form of distortion of reality. And these are two pictures in the National Archive. This is a picture of a rebel sharpshooter during the Civil War. And this is one of what's the opposite of a rebel? Confederate, no, rebel, Union, thank you. Union, this is so good, completion engine. And it's the same person. And the point was made that if you're a photographer and you need to make more money, why not sell to both sides? So he has some examples of these kind of like, wait, I thought that was true. And it's a great book to read. And those of you who know, there was a person named Marshall McLuhan. He predicted this entire world of distortion of any image, specifically to alter politics, that, again, Bill Mitchell points out has been happening for centuries. So it's something to just be aware of, that we have to be more critical of what we see, but we've always had to be that way. 4 minutes. Okay, let me explain agents as we close. So why did agents become the most popular word in AI? I wasn't sure why. I knew the word in the 1990s, but it really came back with a force. And there's a simple reason. It's the fact that if you were paying for AI tokens, we were generating tokens just prior. If you use GPT-4, it used to cost like a lot of money to use GPT-4. Who remembers using GPT-4 and being told don't use too much of it? Here we go. Yeah, see that, here we go. Don't use that too much. It's expensive. And then GPT-4o came out and 4o mini, and the token cost started coming way down. And what happened is 2 years ago, if you ran GPT-4 overnight, you'd get in trouble with your family or your boss because it rang up a huge bill. But because you can now run it very cheaply, it can run in what's called, of course, a loop, a program. So the big thing happened when people tried to describe an agent. This is Lillian Wang, and she's amazing writing out there. An agent is a large language model plus memory plus planning plus tool use. You hear that a lot. But it changed in 2024. People started using the word loop everywhere. So you can run it in a loop, therefore it's autonomous, meaning a computer program. It's running, and you can do that because cost. So that's why suddenly agentic type of autonomous things came into being. And Steve Jobs said in 1984, the next stage is going to be computers as agents. Oh my gosh, that guy, right? Those of you who know the switch we made from regular programming to object-oriented programming, you remember it's like, oh my gosh, I don't get it. I don't get it. And it's like, I finally get it, sort of. That's what this agent era is for the developers out there. We're struggling to understand a new form of object-oriented programming. It's very similar. The abstractions are just named differently. So I want you to be courageous. I heard that Matt said, learn AI deeply. It is something that you just have to accept as a different model of computer programming. And once you get past that, it gets less, you stop hallucinating. But I guarantee you that there'll be a YouTuber out there with one of these videos where they have a face like this that you have to watch. Like, AI has changed everything. And you're like, what? Oh, I get so confused. That's very simple, just programming. And I wrote a book in 2019 that was a complete market failure called How to Speak Machine that has been reproduced by MIT Press as of this year. So I hope it's useful to you. It's in paperback, and it's available to this audience. Okay, wow. I didn't get to all my Ariana, but I got to some basics. Let me see, what is this? I have too much stuff here. Let me see. What's the most useful thing to show you now? There you go. No, that's not that interesting. No, there we go. No, not that one. No. This is the most important. If you ever get lost in all this AI stuff, look at autonomous driving. All of the work in self-driving cars, there's like tons of work on how people manage risk. There's so much research on this that I urge you to look at because the car was the first robot that proved could be dangerous to us ever since it was invented. So if you're worried about AI harm, just look at how the car industry has been looking at that for decades. Okay, I am at my time. Thank you, WordPress community, for having me here. It is such an honor.